In this video, we'll learn how to draw freeform shapes with the pen tool in Illustrator. There are several tools in Illustrator that we could use for drawing irregular shapes, but the pen tool is best for two reasons. One, it's the most versatile in Illustrator, and it gives you the best balance of speed and control when drawing vector shapes. And two, it exists in almost every other media editing software out there. So once you know it in Illustrator, you have a skill that immediately transfers to video editing, animation, 3D modeling, and even making selections in Photoshop. So I've already got a file open here in Illustrator, and I've gone ahead and built in a reference image and a shapes layer to draw into. I'll make sure in my layers panel that I select that shapes layer, and that's where all my new pen tool drawings will land. I can go ahead and hide the layers panel for now. Let's click on the pen tool from the toolbar, and it looks like I'll need to reset my default fill and stroke to a white fill and a black stroke. I'll also make sure to click on View from the menu bar and turn off my smart guides since I won't need them. So my goal here is to use the pen tool to draw an enclosed shape around the eyebrows and upper nose of this owl character. I'll zoom in a little bit here. And what I'm looking for is a relatively flat, low detail area to start drawing. So I'll single click, and that gives me my first anchor point. Now notice that Illustrator is giving me a preview path segment between my mouse cursor and wherever the previous anchor point is. I just want to stretch that out and line it up along the reference edge. What I'm paying attention to here is where that line starts to deviate from the edge of our reference. I can see right about here that preview is matching up pretty well, so I can just single click. When I single click with the pen tool, I'll get a straight path segment between the two anchor points. So from there, I can just keep dragging out that preview, and now I can see here that no matter which way I drag that straight line, it can't line up because my reference edge is curved. So what I can do is look for where my preview starts to deviate from the edge of my reference, and instead of single clicking, I'll click and drag. Notice how this gives me two extra bars moving away from my anchor point. Those are called control handles, and those are what help a path segment to bend. See how it curves in the opposite direction that I'm dragging my mouse. So I'll get this pretty close to where I want it, and I'll zoom in a little bit more. Now I'm just repeating that same process. It's almost like a formula where we're drawing out the preview segment and lining it up with the previous anchor point. If I have a control handle in there, I'll line it up with the control handle as well. So I'll draw that straight line out and look for where it's moving away from the edge of my reference. So right about there is where I want to set my next anchor point. So I'll click and drag, and I want that path segment to curve downwards, so I'm actually dragging up with my mouse. And that's looking pretty good. So there's my anchor point, there's my control handle, and I can see I want to point right about here. Whoops, I actually didn't want that to be a straight line point, so I'm going to hit Command Z on Mac or Control Z on Windows to undo. Now I'll click and drag to get that curved segment. So I'm coming up here to this point of the eyebrow where it's going to be a really sharp angular connection. And there's a couple ways I could handle that. I can just do a single click here and another single click, maybe right about here. Now I think those segments look a little too straight. I want to have that nice curve continue along the top, but still have a sharp connection. So let's hit Command Z or Control Z to undo, and try another method. So here I'll click and drag and give that upper segment a little bit of a curve. Now I've still got that control handle on the side that I'm about to draw, and that's pulling things too far to the right. So I can get rid of that extra control handle just by bringing my mouse over the previous anchor point. Notice it changes to that little caret symbol, and I can click there and delete the right side's control handle. So now I get a really nice angular connection between those two curved segments. Now, sometimes as you're placing a point, you'll find that it's a little bit off from where you want it to be. So while you're still clicking and dragging, you can hold down spacebar on the keyboard, and that lets you move the location of that anchor point to line up better. At this point, I'll speed up the video since we're pretty much just repeating those same steps that we've already covered. When I get back around to the beginning, I'll know that I'm closing off the shape by the way that I get a little O symbol next to my cursor when I mouse over the beginning point. We want to make sure when we're drawing with the pen tool that we're drawing as much detail as we can with as few points as possible. Let's say maybe we were tracing a different part of the image. Maybe it's this little feather here. Here's what you don't want to do. Don't just click and click and click and click and make tons of points. It's poor craft, and it's going to make it almost impossible to go back and edit that shape later if we need to. We'll cover editing vector paths in depth in a separate video. Okay, that's an overview of using the pen tool to draw freeform shapes in Illustrator.